What happens when you don't document who owns your intellectual property? I'm Mike Steger. I'm a copyright and trademark lawyer, and we're going to talk a bit today about what pitfalls you can experience if you don't properly document the ownership. In earlier videos, we've discussed that the owner of intellectual property is usually the person or entity who creates it. Individuals usually own intellectual property they created themselves unless they are employees of a company and created in the scope of work for the company, or if there's a written agreement saying that somebody else will own the results of their work. Well, what happens when these relationships are not documented, or if you created intellectual property before you came to work with a business? There are a couple things that could happen. One, if people are looking to invest money in a business, they will usually not do it unless the intellectual property is properly documented and owned by the business. If there is a partnership and the intellectual property was owned by one of the partners before coming in, if the business breaks up, the intellectual property is usually going to stay with that partner who brought it in. And in a worst case scenario, if an individual is supposed to own intellectual property and they die, it could be very difficult for their heirs to claim ownership of that, those trademarks or copyrights or patents, if things were not properly documented. These kinds of issues, like many other legal issues, are the kinds of things where spending a little bit of money up front can save you thousands, tens of thousands of dollars trying to clean up a mess that wasn't properly documented up front. I run into these situations all the time. Somebody didn't want to spend $500 or $1,000 to document something, and they end up spending $25,000 fighting over it after the relationship breaks up. One other area that I'm just going to mention briefly, where the biggest nightmare scenario can happen when there's not proper documentation of IP, is when there's a bankruptcy filing that affects person or entities who own or have claims to the IP. We're going to talk about that in detail in another video, but that's the ultimate nightmare scenario. I'm Mike Steger. I'm a trademark and copyright lawyer. If you have any questions about your trademarks or copyrights, give me a call.